I will try to explain everything as simply as I can. I am a 32-year-old guy married to my wife Emily, who is 30. We have been married for 5 years and have 2 young kids, a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. Let me give some more background information. My biological dad wasn't living with me when I was growing up. He took off when I was like 5 years old and I haven't seen or spoken to him since. My mom met my stepdad Dave when I was 8 and they got married when I was 10. Dave was an okay guy, not like a terrible stepdad but also not someone I was ever really close with. But he provided for me and my mom, and that is what mattered. Presently I have been really struggling with money problems for the past year or so. I won't go into all the details, but basically my job situation has been really unstable with getting laid off twice and having to take temporary lower paying gigs. Emily works part-time but her income alone isn't enough to cover all our expenses. We have taken a large amount of credit card debt that keeps growing because we can't seem to get ahead of it. It has been really stressful and has put a strain on my marriage because Emily and I keep fighting about money. We have had to take out our savings and I am constantly anxious about whether I will be able to pay all the bills each month. I am looking for a new steady job, but it has been tough. So, a couple of weeks ago Emily suggested that since I'm having such a hard time financially, why don't I ask my stepdad Dave if he can help me out with a loan or something. She pointed out that he is getting older, he is 71 now, and doesn't have any other kids, so she thinks he should want to help take care of his step-grandkids if we are struggling this much. At first, I really didn't want to ask Dave for money. Our relationship has always been pretty shallow and I didn't think he would want to help me, even if he does have money. But Emily kept insisting and saying I will never know unless I try asking him. She said the worst he could do is say no. So, after going back and forth on it for a while, I decided to go to Dave for help. My mom passed away a few years ago, so I went over to his house alone. I tried to keep things pretty casual at first and made some small talk asking how he was doing, telling him a little about the kids, etc. Then I took a deep breath and said something like, "So hey, I actually wanted to talk to you about something kind of important. I have been having a really tough time with money lately and was wondering if there is any way you might be able to help me out with a loan or anything like that." Dave just looked at me stone-faced and was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "You're asking me for money?" "No, absolutely not. I am not just handing out cash, even to family." I tried to explain more about my situation, but he immediately cut me off and said I worked damn hard for decades to save up my money and I will be damned if I'm going to just give it away to someone, even if you are my stepson. I started feeling really embarrassed at this point and angry at the same time. Like, who did he think he was, talking to me like that? So, I told him something like, it wouldn't hurt you to help out your family every once in a while. We are talking about your grandkids here. You must have millions saved up between your pension, retirement funds, etc. A loan would literally not affect your life at all. Well, that really set him off. Dave stood up and started yelling at me saying, "Don't you dare try and guilt trip me about my own money. It is my choice what I spend it on and who I give it to. You are the one who got yourself into this mess, not me. Go ask someone else for handouts because you won't get a dime from me." At this point I could feel my face turning red with anger and embarrassment, so I stood up too and yelled back at him saying, "You are unbelievable. We are struggling over here and you won't lift a finger to help out your own step-grandson and granddaughter. You are just a selfish, greedy old man as usual. Don't expect me to come visit you ever again." We kept yelling back and forth like that for a couple more minutes, calling each other names and insulting each other. Basically, it turned into one of those heated, awkward fights you have with family sometimes when tensions get high. Eventually I just grabbed my coat and walked out of Dave's house. When I got home, Emily could immediately tell something was wrong. I told her the whole story about how Dave reacted when I asked for help and she looked completely shocked. She said she really thought he would be willing to help us, even if it was just a small loan to get us through this tough time. Since then, things have been super tense between me and Dave. We haven't spoken or visited each other at all. Part of me knows I shouldn't have completely blown up at him and said some of the really harsh things I said. But at the same time, I still feel like he was being a huge selfish jerk by not even considering helping out his own family when we are in need. Emily has encouraged me multiple times to try apologizing to Dave and seeing if I can smooth things over with him. But another part of me feels like, why should I be the one to apologize when he is the one who wouldn't lift a finger to help out his own step-grandkids? Shouldn't he be the one to realize he overreacted and try making amends? I guess at the end of the day, it just really hurts that someone who is supposed to be family would be so unwilling to try helping me out even a little bit when I am dealing with such a difficult financial situation, especially when it likely wouldn't be that big of an inconvenience for him. I know having to ask for money from a family member is a little awkward and embarrassing, but I still feel like he should have been a little more understanding and tried to help out in some way. So, Reddit, I want to know, Was I being an asshole for getting so angry and blown up at my stepdad for refusing to loan me any money or help me out financially while I'm struggling? Or was his reaction the one that was out of line here? I would appreciate any honest opinions because I really don't know what to think anymore. Please let me know if I'm being unreasonable or if my frustration with Dave was justified. Thanks. Update number 1. Hey everyone, thanks for all the replies on my original post about the big fight I had with my stepdad Dave after he refused to lend me any money to help out with my financial troubles. I really appreciated seeing the different perspectives, even if a lot of you thought I overreacted a bit. Anyway, I've got another update on this whole situation that is even more crazy. You are not going to believe what happened. So, it has been about a month since the fight between me and Dave. We still hadn't spoken a single word to each other in that time. Every time I thought about reaching out to try to settle things between us, I just got angry again remembering how selfish and unhelpful he was when I was desperate enough to ask him for help. Meanwhile, my financial situation has continued being really stressful and difficult. I have been applying for new jobs like crazy, but haven't had any luck landing something stable yet. I have taken on some temporary gig work and odd jobs here and there to try earning extra cash. But it is not enough to make up for all our expenses and it feels like I am constantly behind. My wife Emily has been so stressed too because of all this money stuff. We argued a couple more times about whether we could make it through another month without dipping more into our savings, which we have already depleted a lot of. The worst part is having to cut back and say no to doing any fun activities with our kids because we can't afford it right now. About a week ago, Emily came to me with an idea after one of our arguments about money struggles. She said something like, "Babe, I know this is going to sound crazy after how terribly Dave reacted when you asked him for help. But what if I went and talked to him to see if he would be willing to lend us some money? He is your stepdad, but he has been like a father figure to me too since we have been together for so long. Maybe he would have a different response if I am the one reaching out?" At first, I immediately shot down the idea. I reminded Emily how Dave made it crystal clear that he didn't want to lend either of us a penny no matter what. And I brought up the big fight we had where he berated me and called me names for even having the audacity to ask about borrowing money. But Emily kept pushing it. She was like, I know. But Dave has always been a bit old-fashioned, you know? Maybe he would be more willing to lend money to the wife, the mother of his grandkids, rather than his stepson that he has never been super close with. He doesn't have any kids of his own, so you would think he would want to make sure his grandkids are taken care of. What's the harm in me just asking him really politely and explaining our situation? I didn't want to agree to it at first because I was still so angry about how rudely Dave treated me before. But eventually I gave in because I knew how desperate we were getting. Emily assured me that even if he said no, at least we would know we tried every possibility. She said she could make sure to be extra diplomatic and respectful when bringing it up. So, I hesitantly agreed to let Emily go over and talk to Dave. I offered to go with her, but she thought it would be better if she went alone. Emily went over to his house a couple days later after doing a few hours at her part-time job in the morning. I've got to be honest, as I was sitting at home waiting for her, I didn't have high hopes at all that she would be able to convince Dave to loan us any money. I was expecting her to come home and say he cursed her out and refused just like he did with me. Part of me almost hoped that's what would happen, because then at least I would feel justified that Dave was just a stubbornly unhelpful prick. Well, a few hours went by before I heard Emily pulling into the driveway. When she walked in the door, I could immediately tell from her face that something major must have happened. She had this look like she could hardly believe it herself. So, Emily sits down on the couch and is just sort of stammering, trying to get the words out. She is like, oh my God, James, you are never going to believe what just happened. Dave, he agreed to lend us money. I can't believe it. At this point, I was absolutely stunned. I asked Emily something like, wait, what? Dave is going to lend us money after how he reacted so brutally when I asked him? How much are we talking? Emily replied saying, well, at first I just politely explained to him about how we were behind on all our bills, had gotten behind on rent, had gotten hit with late fees from some creditors, all that kind of stuff. I told him about all the jobs you have been hustling to find something stable, and how we were at our wits' end worried about getting evicted or having our utilities shut off. I flat out asked if there was any possibility he could lend us some money as an absolute last resort. At first, he gave me a look like he was going to bite my head off just for bringing it up. But then, he actually took a deep breath and his expression softened a bit. He was quiet for a minute before saying, how much do you need? I couldn't believe my ears. So, I told him truthfully that we needed around $5,000 to get us through the next month or two while we kept trying to get on our feet financially. To my shock, Dave just nodded and said, okay, I can do that. I must have had my mouth hanging open because he gave me kind of a smirk. At this point, I was completely dumbfounded listening to Emily recap the conversation. I interrupted her asking, hold on. You're telling me that Dave, the same guy who berated me and called me horrible names, who seemed so against lending any money at all, he just agreed to hand you $5,000 out of nowhere? After he rejected me so harshly? Emily nodded and said yes. That's exactly what happened. Dave went and grabbed his checkbook, wrote me a check for $5,000, and handed it to me. He said something like, here, take this. Consider it a loan for now, but you don't need to pay me back right away. Just get yourselves back on solid footing, that's what's important. Take your time. I still couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like Dave was a completely different person compared to when I spoke to him. I asked Emily, did he give any explanation for why he was suddenly being so generous after shutting me down so rudely? This makes no sense. Emily said, well, I think part of it is that he really does see me as like the daughter he never had. He has always had a softer spot for me than you. But he also sort of acknowledged that he was how did he put it, a hard ass when you asked for help. Dave said something like, I may have come off as an unhelpful person when you asked me about this before. An old man's way of trying to make sure you didn't take anything for granted, I suppose. I'd feel just awful if I didn't help out my own family when they're struggling this badly, grandkids involved and all. At this point I still hadn't said anything, because I was trying to process this unbelievable turn of events. Of all the scenarios I could have imagined, Dave being the one to extend an olive branch and go out of his way to help us out financially was not one of them. So, after Emily finished explaining everything, the first words out of my mouth were, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is incredible. I'm simultaneously overjoyed that he's helping us out when we're in such a tough spot, but also just dumbfounded at his total 180 in attitude. Why did it take you going over there for him to have this sudden change of heart? Emily said she didn't have a full explanation, but she thought part of it might be a sexist mentality where Dave was more willing to lend money to a woman out of some old-fashioned sense of being a provider. Emily also wondered if maybe part of Dave's angrier reaction towards me came from residual tensions from when my mom passed away a few years back. I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this, but there was actually a bit of family drama around her death and inheritance. My mom had left most of her assets and belongings to me rather than Dave, which I think irritated him. So that's pretty much the totally unexpected update. I went from getting angrily rejected and berated by Dave when I asked for financial help, to him handing my wife a check for $5,000 pretty much no strings attached. To say I have so many mixed emotions is an understatement. Part of me still feels annoyed at how rude and dismissive Dave was when I was the one asking him about lending money. Whether it was because of our inheritance squabble, gender role stuff, or just plain dislike towards me, I can't help but feel a little hurt that he had such a cruel reaction versus being more understanding of my situation as his stepson. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't burning with curiosity about the details of what exactly went down between Emily and Dave that made him have such a huge change of heart towards lending us money. What did Emily say or do to loosen those tightly clenched purse strings of Dave's? Was it really just about him being more apt to provide for the wife and mom? Was part of it lingering tensions over my mom's inheritance situation? Did Emily stroke his ego or appeal to him in some other way? I've tried prying a little to get the full scoop out of Emily, but she insists she really doesn't know for sure and was just as shocked as I am about how generous Dave ended up being. I have this gut feeling that she might be leaving something out to avoid inflating tensions between me and Dave any further. But I also realize I should just be grateful rather than demanding answers. Regardless, I really don't know what to make of this whole turn of events. Just a couple weeks ago, I was ranting and venting on Reddit about what an uncaring selfish jackass my stepdad was being about not lifting a finger to help out his own grandkids. Now I'm questioning that because here he went and helped us more than I could have imagined. I guess all I can really do is appreciate the fact that Dave did ultimately come through with generosity. If this had happened a month ago, it would have saved me so much stress and hurt feelings. But I'll try not to dwell on that and just focus on doing everything I can to get our finances fully in order now that we have this temporary buffer thanks to Dave's loan. What do you all think about this update? Was I being too harsh in dismissing Dave before, since he did end up lending us a generous amount? Or do you think his reasons for rejecting me but then helping Emily are still rooted in some unfair double standards that are hard to ignore? Any advice on if/how I should try making amends, or do I just say thank you and move forward?